guys, it's Karl, and in front of me I have the brand new iPhone 14 and the previous gen iPhone 13. I've got the boxes to the side, I've got them in front of me like I mentioned. I actually have them both in blue. And if you didn't know which device was which, if you didn't know your Apple colors, maybe if you're a true Apple geek, you know which one is which. But at first glance, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They're pretty much identical. Cases actually fit both models. I got cases for the new 14. I won't tell you which one it was. And they actually fit the 13 as well. So if you didn't know at glance, they pretty much have the exact same form factor, and actually a lot of the features are similar as well. Maybe we'll start off with that and of course pricing first. So the good thing, the brand new iPhone 14, I kind of told you which one it was. It's this lighter one in blue. This starts at the same price that the 13 came in, which was $799, or I should say is $799. And that's pretty surprising with everything happening with inflation, with everything rising in price. I'm honestly really surprised that Apple kept this at the same entry-level price. We still have the same entry-level storage, 128 gigs. And on the flip side, the 13, which is now a year old, has dropped in price, and this starts at $699. Of course, that same 128 gig storage. With that aside, flipping on over to the front, which is the thing that you'll probably see first, these also have the exact same display. So 6.1 inches, Super Retina XDR. They both have the same notch. When you flip on over to the iPhone 14 Pro, which we just unboxed, I'll leave a video linked up there. That actually has the dynamic island. It's the one with the little floating pill. These still have the same notch, or I guess the 14 has the same notch as the 13, as the 12, as pretty much every time we've seen the iPhone with this notch, the 14 is still the same. The displays also have the same nit brightness, so 800 regularly up to 1200 nits for peak brightness. They're still both stuck at 60 hertz, no ProMotion, no 120 hertz refresh rate on them. They still have the same bezels, pretty much the exact same displays, and I would say internally, also more along that same page, we're sticking to the stuff that are the same. A15 Bionic chip in both. The only difference hardware-wise is the GPU on the 14. We have 5 cores versus the 4 cores found on the 13. So I quickly did a benchmark score, some Geekbench. They were very similar. I also tested out some gameplay footage, and maybe loading times were slightly faster on the 14, maybe saving a couple extra frames. There is also 6 gigs of RAM in the 14 versus, once again, 4 gigs found in the 13. So there are a couple hardware differences, but unless you have these both side by side, unless you're really pixel peeping, unless you're really comparing different frames, honestly, I would say performance on them is identical. Flipping to the back, you may think things are, once again, very similar. We still have a 12 megapixel camera system, both dual cameras, so we still have the wide and ultra wide. There is a slight upgrade though coming to the 14. It has a larger aperture. It's wider at f1.5 coming from f1.6, and that does help a lot with low light performance. I think Apple's number is 25% better than the previous gen. Of course, I'll do some sample shots. If you guys can really tell the difference, let me know. But from good lighting situations, like a bright day like today, I once again couldn't tell. Coming on over to the front though, the front-facing camera. Let me finish this. The wide camera, I forgot to mention that, the ultra wide. There's actually no difference. I couldn't tell anything. Now we can switch back to the front-facing camera. I mentioned pixel peeping. I mentioned really looking close. Off angle with some light, you can actually see that the camera on the 14, or the front-facing camera, is slightly larger, and it does have a larger or wider aperture again at f1.9, and this one does have autofocus. So I know a ton of people are using these cameras for obviously selfies, but a lot more for social media, TikTok, Instagram. I'll leave my shameless plugs down below. And something weirdly that we just noticed taking this quick selfie for this comparison, the iPhone 14's display, or I don't know if it is the display, but the picture in general looks a bit more yellowish / greenish, whereas the 13, that looks a bit more accurate in terms of white balance. So we'll bring the photos onto the computer and we'll flash them on screen now to see the difference if there is. But that definitely is a big difference in white balance and coloring, and I'm not too sure if that's the display or that's the camera itself. And just to explore this little conundrum a bit further, I went into settings. I turned True Tone off so they're the same temperature, and even on just a blank web page on Google, clearly the 14 is slightly more yellow, so maybe it's the display. Some people prefer to have warmer displays. I am someone that tends to like things a bit cooler, but there's clearly a difference in temperature here, and once again, not too sure why that is. Really doesn't affect performance, but maybe it's just these devices as well. For the rest of the camera features though, there are a couple more differences for the 14, and I think that's where a lot of the changes are coming. So for example, we have the new action mode. Think of that as a built-in stabilizer. So when you're doing action sports, when you're running, if you have a GoPro, typically the footage is quite stable. Over here on the iPhone, we're getting the exact same sort of thing. So a lot of that is of course software based. Here's a quick little demo of us running with the 14 versus 13. You can see significant improvements on stabilization on the 14, and also for cinematic mode. Before you could not shoot at 4K, we can now do that at 24 frames. So I think a lot of filmmakers, people that just shoot with their iPhones video-wise in general, will love that extra little feature. And perhaps the last difference, which is actually the first major upgrade on Apple's website coming to the 14s, you can see this extra little icon here, so SOS. The new 14s can now make an SOS or emergency call without connecting to cellular, so via satellite. So if you are in a precarious place, if you are somewhere off the grid, that is enabled. So I think that safety feature along with the new crash detection, and that is kind of baked in with the phone, and that works off the accelerometers, barometers, gyroscopes, as well as microphones to help detect if you are in a car crash, and once again, emergency services will get notified. So there's a lot of safety features built in, and typically those are features that people don't normally think of when getting a device, but it's something that could save your life. It could save the life of a loved one, and just having those extra different safety features are once again a really nice touch from Apple, just making it a bit better for the user experience, and I don't think any other phone company has that, to be honest, so that's really cool. The last kind of thing that I want to touch on for differences is actually devices in general for sizing. So last year on the 13, I'll pull it off to the side here, we could get the iPhone 13 mini, this little guy, which had a huge fan following. Unfortunately, last year was the last year of the mini, and this year for the 14, we can now get the 14 Plus, which is coming in a couple weeks. I believe that's coming to the studio as well, so make sure you're subbed for that full coverage. So RIP to the 13 mini, you'll just have the option of getting the larger 6.7 inch. So that's kind of the range and lineup, and if you were to ask me off of the bat, is it worth upgrading to the 14? If you already own a 13, I think the quick answer is just a straight up no. There aren't as many features that would entice me. If you're coming from an older device, I think this also depends on the region that you're in and what deals you can snag for the 13. If you can save $100 from the Apple Store, great. I'm sure a lot of your providers, a lot of your carriers will offer the 13 at a way reduced price so they can get rid of inventory. I would honestly still lean towards the 13, but if those safety features, those extra little camera features make that extra little difference for you and those are worth the $100 to you, then obviously the 14's the right device for you. Let me know down below in the comments which one you would get, and for the color's sake, just because I have both blue models here, which one do you prefer? It's a toss-up. Once again, maybe leaning towards the 13. Personal preference. Hope you guys enjoyed this vid. Hope you guys enjoyed all of the iPhone coverage. We had unboxings, we had comparisons. If you want to see any other videos, let me know, and I will get them covered, and I'll catch the rest of you in one of my next ones. Peace!